Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, The Purpose Driven Homestead, where we show you how to become more self-sufficient in your own backyard. Now, today we wanted to show you a little more about our indoor grow house and how we use it to feed our family fresh produce throughout the winter. Now, I've got this kind of scanned back here. You can see the entire grow house. Fresh is kind of a definition that we should probably talk about a little bit. When you think of fresh, you probably think of the fresh produce that you go into your supermarket and grab and pick up and run out the door with every day. And you're like, hey, I'm getting it fresh every day because I go in. Maybe you grab that stuff, you pick it up on Friday, you cook it Friday night, and that is your definition of fresh. And that is pretty fresh. I mean, you're using it very, very quickly. But we actually talk a little bit about this on our blog. The produce in your grocery store, by the time you're actually cooking it, is probably 1 or 2 weeks old at that point, depending on where it's coming from. If it's coming from the US, or if it's coming from outside the US, depending on what time of the year it is and what's in season. And you lose somewhere between 15 and 70% of all the key nutrients. Those can be lost in that first 7 days. So what you think is fresh is likely anything but that. Now, if you want to see more about how we actually built this grow house, click on the top right hand corner up there. You'll see a link. That is actually the build for this DIY grow house. I highly encourage you to go check it out. We actually built this thing from just PVC. Go there, it'll show you all the steps and how we use it. We're probably gonna do a follow-up video to this one when we start doing our spring planting, but at this point in time, it's early January, and this is what we've got going on in our grow house. Now, I thought I'd do just a quick kind of tour of the grow house and what we have going on here. So this is an old table that we had, that we used to have as a dinner table, but our family got too big, so we couldn't use it anymore, just didn't have enough seats, and it wasn't big enough for our family. So we repurposed it into something that we could use over in this corner. Now, this grow house is all built from PVC. It is 2022, the 3rd of January. Now, it is about 21 degrees outside right now, but inside we have fresh spinach growing, which looks, I think, pretty amazing, and it tastes amazing. And if you notice, there are no bite holes. There are no holes in any of these leaves. And the reason we have that is because growing inside, you don't have to worry about slugs, you don't have to worry about snails, and you don't have to worry about any types of insects. Now I get it, it is the winter, so insects would probably be pretty infrequent outside, but slugs are still a real problem outside when you're growing. Additionally, in the back here, you can see that we've got some romaine lettuce growing as well. Super sweet, it is doing really, really well. All right guys, so I thought it might be good to show you all the components and the things that you're gonna need to set up your own grow house. Again, if you have interest in this grow house, how we did it, how we created it, links will be in the description below. That card was earlier in the video, so if you wanna rewind and catch that card, you can click on it directly. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what are you gonna need in order to grow in your own grow house. Once you've built one, what do you need? Well, first and foremost, you're gonna need some type of structure that you can then support the lights from. Whether you use what we did or something that you wanna create on your own, this is gonna be critical. You have to have something to support these lights from. Now, we've kind of got them, I thought this was gonna be a temporary solution, but believe it or not, it's actually worked out so well that we decided just to leave it as is. It doesn't seem to be causing any problems, and there was no need to over-engineer what we had in place. So you're gonna have to have a grow house. Now, then the second thing that you'll need is you're gonna need some containers. Now, I know a lot of people love hydroponics, and I have no problem with that at all. Definitely not trying to dissuade anyone from having a hydroponic setup. That's fantastic if you can do it. However, in our house, that's not an option. You know, we've got the kids' toys right underneath here where, you know, a little toy box. This is our living room floor. We don't have the ability to have a bunch of water circulating in case there's an issue, a leak, a problem. That's just not something that we can do. So in our case, since we were growing in a space that we already had, we knew we got a lot of sunlight in this corner, we decided to just use an old table that we repurposed. We used this grow house that we created, and we decided to go with plastic tubs. Now, the plastic tubs that we used are just your generic Sterilite tubs that you can get from Walmart. Again, I'll link all these things in the description below, but these are nothing fancy. They're actually, all these Sterilite tubs are actually food safe to start off with, but you're not putting these in heat. You're not going to be in a situation where that's going to be a concern. But we actually use these Sterilite tubs to house all of our plants. The next most important thing is, all right, what do you put in the tubs? We use only organic fertilizer, so things that have been broken down by animals or through microbes. That's what we're talking about here. So I want to show you a little bit about what we're doing, how we create the soil that we use, and why it creates such beautiful vegetables and things that are deeply green, even though we're not adding any man-made or mined fertilizer. So I thought I'd do a segue and let you guys meet Sweet Girl. Sweet Girl is one of our breeding does in our small rabbitry that we have on our homestead. Now you might be wondering, why on earth are you showing us a rabbit in what is a grow house video? Well, like I said, we have a little rabbitry and we use that for food for our family. But in addition to as food for our family, we also use this as a source of food and a rich source of rabbit manure. Now you might be thinking, that's pretty gross. Well, rabbit manure is among one of the best manures that you can raise on a small backyard homestead. Now there's also chicken manure that you can use, but rabbit manure, one, it's plentiful, and we have a number of rabbits. I'm actually, you see down here, today is cleanup day, so I'm actually scooping this out. I let it go for a little bit so that it'll decay some. It helps with the process, and then I'll actually put it in feed bags, reuse feed bags, and I'll use that as a way to store it, and then sometimes I'll sell some of it because people love to use this stuff in their organic gardening as fertilizer around their plants. One thing that is unique about rabbit manure is that it is a cold compost. So as a cold manure, you don't have to compost this at all. You can actually take this and apply it directly into your garden. Now I'm not talking about smeared on your plants, but my point here is you can actually apply this at the base of your plants either before they start growing or even while they're growing as a fertilizer, and it serves a great purpose. Now, it's like 2-2-1 or 2-2-0 depending on the rabbit and what they're eating. So the mixture of it from a true traditional fertilizer perspective, it doesn't have what you're going to find from a numbers perspective on mined fertilizer. But mined fertilizer is kind of a flash in the pan. This is actually time release. So it will continue to feed your plants as it decomposes and kind of falls apart. Now you can see when you do this, you'll get a mixture of food that might be wasted, and that's mainly hays that have been ground up, maybe some corn and a few protein sources, but mainly it's hay. But you're also going to get actual hay. So if you're feeding your rabbits like we do hay to supplement, to make sure they're getting the right stuff, then you're going to have hay mixed in. So this is already composting without me doing anything. You cannot do this with chicken manure. You can absolutely use chicken manure, but chicken manure needs to be composted to be safe. It has a lot of nitrates in it, or nitrogen content, I should say. And because of that high nitrogen content, and chickens are prone to salmonella. So you can have bacteria in there as well, where rabbits really aren't prone to any of that kind of stuff. So if you're planning on doing something in your backyard and you don't have a lot of space, rabbits are a fantastic resource from a number of different perspectives. We're going to talk about our chicken manure. So our chickens provide, it's actually cleanup day, or clean out day. So it's time to clean all this out and get new fresh bedding in here for the chickens. It's been a couple of weeks, and so the girls are absolutely ready for it. We use a combination of bedding, which is, you can see some newspaper clippings still in here. You can see that there is pine shavings and aspen shavings. So we have a combination of things that go in here, but obviously there is a lot of manure. We clean it out a little bit less frequently during the winter, just because it's typically so wet and cold, but it's warm right now, so we're gonna make a break for it and clean out in here. So, got a few eggs to pick up. So this is the next stop on the journey to create, I think, really good soil to grow indoors with. This is also great. We're gonna take this, we're gonna move over to the composter with it, and so that'll be our next stop. All right, girls. So we do also have a tumbler composter. That's where all of our chicken manure will typically go. Now this one's full right now. I'm gonna show it to you, but you're gonna see kind of how that progression goes. But sometimes when it gets full, we have to rotate. And so we've actually got a rescue barrel here. I've got tilted up on some rocks, but you can see a hole cut at the bottom to allow water to drain through. This is actually where we're throwing all of our compost now. You can see coffee grounds in there, You see all kinds of stuff. And I'll turn that a little bit, but what we'll do is we'll rotate this and dump it in once this gets a little bit further down. This will just kind of slowly sink down. You can see where it was really close to the top. It's actually already decomposing and sinking down little bit by little bit as it does its thing. But we'll take this, we'll move that over. So this is our composter. Like I said, it's full. So I'm gonna show you what's in here. Now this is getting very close to being done. It's a little wet, but you can see now all of that rich manure from the chickens. You can see newspaper that's been, or not newspaper, but just all kinds of mail and stuff that's non-plastic, so just paper. No plastic in that stuff. That's one big thing you need to make sure you don't do. But this is good, super rich compost. We'll take this, we'll mix this with the rabbit manure that we showed you a minute ago. And this will be the basis for just some really amazing soil. And that's what we're gonna use in our grow house. In addition to our compost and to our rabbit manure that we already talked about 50% of the remaining growing medium that we use in our grow house is going to be from garden soil. Now you can see our garden soil is very rich. It's actually something we've been working on for several years now. One of the reasons we like to make sure we include this, it has all these rocks and minerals that are built in that you would not get in normal compost, and this is where the plants get all their nutrients from. So you've got your typical NPK mixture, but in addition to that, you need all the trace minerals that come from things like garden soil. Otherwise, your plants won't thrive. Now, one of the other things that we do, and you're gonna laugh, no, that's not toilet paper. These are coffee grounds and filter paper. We have access to a local company that serves its employees a lot of coffee free of charge, so they drink a lot of coffee free of charge. So we take all of this coffee from that place, and it's actually, this is just a fraction of it, but we take all this coffee and we put it into our garden. Now we spread it out because too much coffee is bad for almost any plant except for maybe azaleas and blueberries. It's pretty acidic, so only plants that love acidic soil would be interested in tons of coffee. But we actually use this stuff in our garden. It's got a lot of nitrogen, and when you mix it in properly, you don't have too much of it, it actually is a great base for your garden. It will compact, so that's why you want to mix it in and do it across the entire garden. Okay, so now that you've seen how we create or what we use to grow as our growing medium for our plants, I want to talk a little bit more about the other things that you're going to need when you're growing plants indoors. So we've talked about these tubs, you're going to need that. You're definitely going to need some really good quality soil. And if you don't know who to reach out to, there's probably forums on whatever social media that you use that you can find people locally that raise rabbits or other things. But rabbits, they're just such, I cannot go on and on enough about rabbits. But let's keep going. The next thing on our list, we've got tubs, we've got really great soil. The next thing you're going to need is a light source. Now in our case, we've talked a little bit about this already. We love the position here. We intentionally chose this spot because we get a ton of natural light from the east and from the south. So we get the morning and the afternoon sun kind of beaming into this space. We don't always have enough light, so we've got these two additional grow lights that we use to lengthen our day. We typically will start them somewhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning until the sun comes out. And then we won't turn them back on unless it's a cloudy day. We won't turn them back on until closer to say 4 or 4:30 when the sun's setting and we don't have any light anymore, right? So once that light stops, it's getting dark at 4:30 or so these days. So we will take these and turn them on until probably 7 or 8 at night. And that will then give our plants all the light that they need. But the sunlight is obviously the better choice. You can see these guys are even leaning out towards the sun, which is very common with plants. But you're going to need grow lights. These grow lights that we use are linked in the description. If you want to know which one do you recommend, I don't know if I have a preference. If I had to lean onto one, it would probably be this Bloom Plus. This Bloom Plus is, I think, brighter. It gives you more of that bright sunlight kind of feel to it. It's got a bunch of Samsung LEDs, so they're high quality LEDs. I think it's considerably brighter. The one caveat that I'll say, and that's why I have a hard time doing it, is this one you can daisy chain together with others. So once you plug it in, you can then go from this other plug over here, right there, And you can then use that to daisy chain together. So let's say you had several of these lights that you wanted to add in, you could then daisy chain those without having a bunch of cords dangling everywhere. So there's some value to it. This one also has a vegetable and a bloom light setting. I don't know if there's any big difference between the two, but they both seem to do really well, as you can tell. So we like having them both on. I think it gives some variety. There are some differences in the light. This one's more of a white, bright light. This one has some more, I'll call it ultraviolet and purples and things and pinks and that kind of stuff in the light. So we like having them both. So that's the lights. So you've got, we know now we have our soil, we have our containers, we have our lights. What else do you need in order to grow? Well, you're gonna need a temperature gauge. And we don't sit this here normally, but I wanted to have it up here so you could see. This one is one that we actually have a couple of. We use these for our outdoors as well. But it has a sensor that you can hook up, that you can have outdoor sensors, and it'll tell you what the temperature is outside. But it also has this indoor temperature. So one of our sensors broke after a couple of years of use. We just decided to repurpose this indoor one and just have it in our grow house here so you can see what the temperature is outside or inside at any given time. So in this case, it's about 65 here in the sunlight, which is pretty awesome. And these greens love cool weather, so you don't want it too hot. Now, you might ask, what do you do if you're trying to grow in a place where it is colder, right? So maybe I'm doing it in a garage or in a basement. Absolutely, if you don't get natural light, that's gonna be a challenge. You're gonna need more of these LED lights. I do prefer these. They don't get super, super hot, but there's other lights that are very good. These tend to be, I think, a little cheaper. So if you're just starting out, this is a good way to go. If you want to go whole hog, there's really, really fancy lights out there that you can get. And you can even find some on Craigslist if you're looking. But these are the ones we decided to go with. So you've got lights, you've got your containers, now you have your thermostat because it's important to make sure you know what the temperature is. If you're trying to keep this grow house warmer, then I encourage you to use plastic. We haven't used it because we have everything conditioned. So inside our house, it stays about 60 degrees. Now, so in our case, we didn't put any plastic, but you could easily put plastic on that wall over there and on that wall over there and have the light still coming in, and it would keep it considerably warmer, especially if you put it on the top as well. We don't have that. We have our top open and we have the two sides open, but that's an absolute option, and that will make it considerably warmer, much more like a greenhouse. So when the sun comes in, the heat's trapped, it can't go anywhere. Now, one thing that you may have noticed underneath our planters here is some Mylar. This is a super thick, heavy duty Mylar that we found online. We have not found it anywhere locally. We haven't been able to find it in any of the growing stores or growing centers. We also haven't found it on like Walmart or any of those. We've looked and looked. I haven't found it anywhere but online. So I'm gonna leave a link in the description below. You can order it there. We love this stuff. It's been about a year and it started to curl up a little bit on the edges here, if you can see. But you know, that's not a deal breaker for me, but this stuff is super strong. So we've actually got it on the bottom. It's waterproof. It's got like this diamond plate finish to it. It's definitely got a texture. It's super tough. It's waterproof, so we put it on top of this table. When we don't have these tops down here, this stuff is actually good because if you overwater or the water gets out and gets away from you, we've got a little watering can that we use here on the side. That has rainwater in it, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but we will actually sometimes miss it. It's nice because this keeps the table from getting wet and it keeps that water on top of it. Now, obviously it'll run off if you're not careful, but we like it because it keeps the top from getting all scratched. We can sit stuff on top of it, and any light that hits that actually can bounce back up and has another opportunity to hit the leaves of the plants, so you're maximizing the return on your light, natural or if you're creating it yourself. I can't overemphasize how important this Mylar material is to the process because it reflects so much of this light. So we've got it on two sides. You can see we've got another piece right here that we can fold down. But it reflects all of this light, and we have this down all day, and it creates a tremendous amount of magnification. So obviously it's not magnifying the light, but it gives that light an opportunity to come back to. So it's like a multiplier, maybe is a better term. It's a multiplier for the light because it hits that, has an opportunity to bounce back into your plants, and they get a second chance to get that light that they may have missed because they were at the wrong angle and what have you. So big, big, big win. We love this stuff. It's very, very helpful. Now, I mentioned before that one of the other things that we think is very important to growing your own produce inside naturally, as much organic as we can get, is we are always using rainwater. So we have a rain barrel catchment system that we use. I think there's a lot of benefits from rainwater that you don't get otherwise. So there's actually a link if you want to see our rain barrel system. We actually have a rain barrel system that we did, kind of a DIY with food grade trash cans, which are those brute trash cans. If you want to see that, I'll link it up here at the top, and it'll also be in the description. All right, lastly, I think one of the things that's really important to have when you're growing inside is a tester. Now, testers they can be cheap, they can be expensive. I like this one. This is a 4-in-1 tester. I think this thing's like $9. I'll leave it in the description below. If you want to find out what your soil's doing, this is the best way to do it. So if you notice, this is this was made by Leaf Luster Rapid Test. But on here, it's actually got sunlight, soil fertility, soil moisture, soil acidity / alkalinity, and I love the fact that there's no batteries in this. So here is the tester, and I tried to get in the light here so you can see it a little bit better. But this tester is actually, it gives you all of these options. So it says light, fertility, moisture, and pH. Those are the three. There's a switch that you go between on all of these. No batteries required. And then it's a fairly dummy-proof little list of colors at the top that show you, hey, it's either good or it's bad or what have you. All right, so let's see this thing at work. So right now we've got it in the light mode. So you can see it's set up here on light. So we want to be looking at that third row. So we're going to put it down in here. And in this case, it's using this up here at the top. So we just want to kind of get it stationary. But you can see that from a light perspective, it's showing that it's pretty low, right? There's not a ton of light coming in at this point. Now I'm going to flip the lights on and then show you the difference. So you can see now it's like in the purple color from a light perspective, right? You can see that it shot way up now. And it's in the middle, so we're getting good light now. So that's the light, and it's sensing it from this space up here. So next, let's test. We'll get this in here. We're going to switch this over. We've got it now on moisture, and we're going to show you a little bit about how that moisture works. So you can see here, it's hanging out in that 2 range, so maybe on a little dry side, not too much. Now we'll move it over to this other planter, which is always important. You want to make sure you're getting it in different places. You can see here, this one is a little bit more moist. So it's hovering at the top end of 2 and some change, almost 3. So really right there in the middle part, we don't want it too wet, we don't want it too dry. So this helps us get a good read on that as well. Then finally, the last piece is pH. So we have to go all the way to the top to look at our pH. I just flipped it over to that, and we're running around 6.5, almost 7. We'll come over here, we'll look to see, same kind of deal on the pH. See how that soil's looking. Hovering right around 7. So there you go. This is a pretty cool little tester. I think you need this if you're going to be growing indoors because you want to make sure you know what the condition of your soil is. But you can use this outdoors as well. But I think it's very useful. The fact that it doesn't have batteries is really awesome. You don't have to worry about those going bad on you. Super easy to use, and I'd highly recommend. Again, the link is in the description for this below as well. Okay, guys, we're real close to the end. I have some tomatoes growing here in the back as well. That's the other thing that you can do with this grow house is I think, tomatoes need a fairly significant amount of light. Now, when I started these things out, they were about this big, and they were plants from our chickens. We gave them some scraps from our garden. I'll move this cord out of the way, but I gave them some scraps in the garden. These things have really grown like crazy, and we're getting a few blossoms on there. Not sure how they'll turn out. Stay tuned. We'll probably do some updates on that as well. All right, guys, so let's talk a little bit about lessons learned. So I think this is a wonderful setup for something if you're going to grow indoors during the winter. I think this is a really, really good setup, especially if you're starting out and you don't know where to begin. Super simple, very few pieces. You don't have to worry about the aquaponics. There's probably a few things that I would say have, definitely make things a little easier. One is having this little switch. It's nice here because when you turn the switch on and off, the lights come on and off, and I don't have to worry about, plugging stuff in and out. So having these on a simple power strip is pretty awesome. The other thing is, I'm not sure yet if we're gonna get any production out of our tomatoes. I just don't know. It may be that these lights aren't bright enough. It may be that we don't have enough of them. But for the tomatoes, jury's still out. The little stick in the back is actually a fig tree that we are overwintering. So that guy, he can barely see, but he's just starting to bud out a little bit. So I think he thinks it's spring. But we'll give him the chance to go ahead and get a jump on that. For spinach, I'm telling you, you've never had better spinach. This stuff is amazing, super green, super healthy. As soon as we want something to eat, we come up here with a pair of scissors. We'll cut off some, and you can actually see a few that we've cut off as we get them. We've done probably 3 or 4 weeks worth of cuttings off these. We'll cut some from this end and we'll let it grow back. We'll cut off some from this end, or we'll start from this side and work our way back. So we kind of work our way through this, but the results are fantastic. And you can see our romaine lettuce back here looking fantastic as well. Super sweet, really, really tasty. I have no complaints with this at all. I would highly recommend this setup for anyone who's looking to start out. And I think it's a simple way of growing your own food indoors. If you have any questions about this setup or want to know more about how we did it, drop a comment below. We try to do our best to respond to all comments, but drop a comment below. We're happy to talk about it. I get it. This may not be perfect. It may not even be what you want to do, but for us, it's worked really, really well. We actually plant directly into this soil. So we make a little furrow, we go down and we drop our seeds in and we sow all around here. So we get a really good crop. We'll thin some of these out over time. This has been a fantastic way for us. It may not be perfect. It may not be the way that you would do it, but for us, this has worked out well. And I think for beginners, this is a great way to start growing your own food indoors during the winter. So that's it, guys. Thanks for joining today. We hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click that like button and consider subscribing to our channel. We love putting out these videos, sharing with you ways that you can become more self-sufficient in your own backyard, and in this case, in your own home. If you like this video, check out some of these others you might like as well. And we'll see you next time on the Purpose Driven Homestead.